Bruce McDougall talks to Clover Moore about issues in this weekend's Sydney Council elections, including plans to boost live music in the capital. Confusing because whether you're even allowed to vote could depend on what side of the street you live on. And in the city of Sydney it's turning increasingly bonkers with scandalous resignations, dastardly defections and awkward emails doing the rounds. There's also some eye-opening policies from free sanitary pads to multi-million-dollar milk crates. But let's go back to basics. With this being the New South Wales local government elections, you might imagine every local council in the state would be up for grabs. This is not the case. In fact, councils that cover around 2 million of NSW's 7 million plus residents will not be holding a vote. If you live in the Western Sydney suburb of Toongabbie, for instance, whether you vote will depend what street you live on, or even what side of the road. The same goes for Newtown and Baulkham Hills. The reason for this dearth of democracy is the government's controversial council mergers that overnight saw a slew of new councils created and a bunch more waiting in the wings. If you live in any of these councils' areas, you won't be voting until late 2017. Opposition leader Luke Foley condemned the decision and said it meant councils were being run by unelected dictators. Pity the poor people of Coolum and Shire though. They were due to have an election on Saturday, but only 9 people nominated for the 9 positions. That means that all get in by default, even if they can't tell their *shay from their agenda. But it's in Sydney where some feel democracy has really fallen off a cliff. Uniquely, the LGA that covers the CBD and surrounding suburbs of Australia's largest city has had its own voting system imposed. In 2014, the government raided through a law that gave businesses in the city 2 votes to everyone. For residents, the argument being that businesses pay lots of rates, so we should give them lots of votes. Although, to those of a cynical inclination, it appeared to be one more none too subtle move to dislodge independent Lord Mayor Clover Moore from the town hall throne she has sat on for the last 12 years. None has worked and every attempt seems to have the opposite effect, cementing her outsider status. There's a few famous faces to distract the voters this time around. Footy legend Ian Roberts, the first ever rugby player to come out as gay, is throwing his hat in with Labour. Former head of the Australian Medical Association and frequent media commentator on health issues, Kerry Phelps is on Ms Moore's ticket. Away from Sydney, an infamous face is hoping for election success with the Liberals' James Diaz is standing for Blacktown Council. You may remember the face because he's the chap who stood in the 2013 federal election and when asked by a reporter what the coalition's 6-point plan was to limit asylum seekers, he got stumped after one. Sydney Liberal candidate Christine Forster doesn't have any famous names on her slate, but she does have a very famous brother in the form of ex-PM Tony Abbott. She was happy to roll him out for a fundraiser a few weeks back but told News.com, that would be the sum total of his involvement. Although Abbott was seen giving out flyers at Manly Wharf during the federal election, perhaps there's a concern he won't get as warm a welcome in the city proper. Mind you, there's been so much drama in the Liberal camp it's all got a bit House of Cards even without Tony. Ms Forster's campaign manager resigned amid allegations he used a corporate credit card for almost $14 of personal expenses, while her likely running mate, Edward Mandler, defected to the independent Sydney Matters team. Although all indications were the two Libs hadn't exactly been besties for a while and were happy to have some time out from one another, Mr Mandler has been a constant thorn in the Lord Mayor Moore's side, lambasting her for what he sees as a failed and expensive council policy to make the city more energy efficient. but he has some interesting policies of his own, and earlier this year implored council to provide free sanitary towels to its residents. City of Sydney is flush with cash and throws around money like there's no tomorrow, he said in July. Providing free sanitary products is a low-cost solution to equality that ought to inspire corporations around Australia to follow suit. It's just a bit awkward his then party, the Liberals, failed to even axe the GST on said products, let alone make them free. Mr. Mandler is now running alongside city business owner Angels Vathulkas. While they're buddies now, there must have been some cringes in the party room this week when emails emerged from when they were rivals. Mr. Mandela called Ms. Vathulkas hysterical and dismissed her networking events as just an attempt to find a husband. Ouch. Graciously turning the other cheek, Ms. Vathulkas said the Barbs were, sadly, part of the political game. Ms. Moore's kept out of the fray, but her detractors have long characterised her as being oblivious to the fact Sydney is Australia's engine of growth rather than her own fiefdom. Her love of cycleways and hatred of the West Connex mega motorway project proves to her detractors she cares more about the foibles soy latte city folk than the needs of Sydney residents beyond her council's borders. They point to Ms. Moore's championing of multi-million-dollar art projects, including a towering arch of skyscraper proportions, which some say is technically impossible to build, and a giant milk crate to nestle in a city park, as further proof her priorities are skewed. While Ms. Forster has criticised the gradual deterioration of the gay hub of Oxford Street as proof of council inertia, and while many thank Ms. Moore for bringing Melbourne-style small bars to Sydney, there was also that $80 pop-up bar that served nothing but water. She doesn't seem bothered though. Haters gonna hate. But during her tenure the city's population has grown 30% and she likes to drop into the conversation the fact the city has a financial surplus of $100 million. A figure that makes the federal government grin with jealously. But even if you disagree with public art, can't abide cycleways that cherish them both, at least City of Sydney siders are able to vote this weekend in NSW's confounding, confusing elections. That's a privilege many are being denied. Benedict.brook@news.com.au